Now, leaders from NATO, the Western military alliance, are gathering in Turkey for their summit. High on the agenda will be the continuing war on Ukraine by Russia, as the conflict shows no sign of ending. Over the weekend, Russia launched another major attack on Kyiv, killing more than 20 people. Another concern for the leaders is how to keep President Trump on side. There's the potential for the US president to berate those countries failing to meet agreed increases in defence spending. Mr. Trump has indicated there will be consequences for those nations falling behind. Ahead of the meeting, President Zelensky has warned Ukraine is running out of missile interceptors to counter Russian ballistic missile strikes, calling the situation absurd.
Недостатньо засобів.
We lack sufficient defensive capabilities. This is particularly true of the missiles for the Patriot system. It is simply nonsense in today's world that production has not yet been established to the extent required to protect people from ballistic terror.
Ahead of the meeting, NATO's chief urged members to offer Ukraine their continued support as Russia steps up its missile attacks.
As Ukraine continues to defend its sovereignty, allies and NATO partners must continue to ensure Ukraine gets what it needs. And let me be clear, all allies need to pull their weight so that our support to Ukraine continues to flow.
Now, we're just looking at pictures of arrivals in Istanbul and Ankara, actually, for that summit, the NATO summit. We're expecting the Canadian Prime Minister, Mark Carney, to be appearing very soon. Let's talk, though, to Sarah Rainsford, our correspondent in the Ukrainian capital, Kyiv. And Sarah, hello to you. What is likely to be President Zelensky's message to the NATO meeting today?
I think he has a couple of messages. I think one message is the one that you've just been talking about, which is that Ukraine urgently needs help from its allies to get the interceptor missiles that it desperately needs to stop Russia's ballistic missiles as they're launched at this country. Now, the reason he is going to make that call so loudly, I think, is because of precisely what we've seen here inside Ukraine over the past week. We saw two very large-scale Russian attacks particularly focused on the capital here. We now know that in total, more than 55 people have been killed in those two attacks and dozens of people injured. Now, these are people who were killed in their homes as they slept. So devastating attacks for Ukraine. And when you look at the statistics, you realize that that is because of all the missiles fired, Ukraine was unable to intercept the ballistic missiles that Russia was using. So I think that message of the urgent need for interceptors, and that means US-made Patriot missile systems primarily, is going to be top of the President Zelensky's priorities at that meeting. But I also think he has another message. I think that message is that Ukraine, as far as he's concerned, has begun to turn the tide in this war. It feels like it is on the front foot, if you like, because of Ukrainian drone strikes against oil refineries in particular, deep inside Russia. And I think Mr. Zelensky wants people to see that the strikes by Russia, the escalation of strikes by Russia, are its response to what Ukraine is doing now inside Russia itself. And it wants Ukraine's allies to support it at a moment when it is particularly critical to do so, because Ukraine feels it does have an advantage now. It can press home in terms of its drone technology, and it wants to use that to force President Putin into peace talks. Right now, though, he's choosing to escalate.
And Sarah, do we have any idea of how receptive a hearing President Zelensky is likely to get from President Trump and others?
It's an interesting question as far as Donald Trump is concerned. Remember, of course, for so long in this war, he has primarily been, let's be blunt, he's primarily been on Russia's side. He likes to back a winner, and he thought that Vladimir Putin was the strongest side in this war. And so in all of the moves towards peace talks at the beginning, he was clearly allowing Russia's kind of demands to dominate and suggesting that Ukraine needed to comply and to compromise. I think that has changed. We've seen some much more positive comments from Donald Trump in recent days and weeks, suggesting that he sees Ukraine now as having some kind of advantage. So it will be interesting to see what kind of dynamic there is, what kind of language he uses. He will be meeting Zelensky in Ankara tomorrow. So I think that's important. But I think particularly we've seen from European allies of Ukraine and from the Nato leader and also from, for example, the Finnish president in recent days, stressing that they do think that Ukraine has changed things somewhat on the battlefield. It stopped Russian ground troops in their advance, and it does seem to have, its drones do seem to be doing damage to Russia politically and also its economy. So I think that is an important message that Ukraine is making, and I think European allies are also taking.
Sarah, thanks very much. Sarah Rainsford in Kyiv.